So, hello, we are talking with Michael Dennis today, who is one of the Ozark authors published by Dolores Cannon and Ozark Mountain Publishing. He's written these two books. His first one was Morning Coffee with God, and his second one is God's Many Mansions. Just see the cover there. That's also published by Ozark Mountain Publishing. So, hi, Michael.
Hello.
Hi. So, I wanted to talk to you more about morning coffee with God today. I think that the reason, oops.
Oh, it's jumping out at you.
Did you want to hold it?
Sure.
Yeah, that might be nice.
Yes, it wants some company.
We wanted to talk about morning coffee with God because that's where you got your start with Ozark and with Dolores Cannon.
Yes.
And that really set up your publishing career, really, didn't it, as a writer,
Yes.
didn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful story, really, isn't it? Because it's the culmination of I'll let you tell the story, but quite a difficult childhood, and then you had this experience where you were talking to God and you were having almost like a dream-like conversation with Him, and then the dream turned into reality, and then you became a writer and a very successful writer. And so I'd really love to explore your story with you. So tell us how you began to write Morning Coffee with God.
Well, it goes back to childhood when I had a very estranged father who was never there for me. And at the age of 11, I got involved with the church, and I was always talking to God. As a child, I remember saying, I want to see Him face to face someday, and in the view of Heavenly Father type thing. So this went on for many years. And I had been doing other writings, things like that, and I had a few dreams that I had forgotten where I would be thinking about that. And then in 2005, I remember feeling just discouraged because books were not being published, that kind of thing. And I think I said something like, Lord help me, God help me, kind of thing. So I see now that was a type of prayer. And then I woke up at 5 in the morning at a friend's house in Cincinnati, Ohio, where I live. I was living in Kentucky, and I actually had a dream that God was there, dressed very nonchalantly, casually, and we were preparing this cup of aroma coffee. And He said, I've heard you, I listened to all my children, and you've called, and now I've come to you, I'm ready. We're going to have these morning coffee talks, and I will answer your questions and give you comfort. So that was the beginning. They were through certain dreams, but as we continued to talk in the lessons, I really didn't know what level this was happening. But the information was comforting, primarily that you're not alone. You know, He says, I wish I could have conversations with all of my children. I am more real to you than you can begin to imagine. And that was on the back page here. He has a little, I don't have the glasses on, but it's a little quote I love.
Would you like me to read it?
Yes, it's,
Yes?
if I,
It's back here?
it's the little quote that's,
Is it real or just a series of vivid dreams? That is for you, the reader, to decide. As Michael says, there is much more truth to this so-called fantasy than people realize. So what is reality and what is fantasy?
and this one was, I am as real to you as your capacity to receive me is, and your capacity is much greater than you can ever begin to imagine.
So tell me about these dreams, Michael, because we were talking about a series of, I guess, coffee mornings with God. Tell me
Coffee
about
talks.
that.
They were based around writings that I had done years ago, where I explored different questions that I was asking, philosophical concepts, ideas, and they begin like they were conversations, feeding up information to answer, primarily to remind you, to constantly remind me that we're not alone. Things happen for a reason. The primary existence being that we can all make that conversation, the connection with. It starts in the heart. It starts within, and everybody. You don't have to go through a preacher or a church or the Catholic, all of that. I'm here for all of you, and the answers and the. Some experiences I had, some things I had written, some past life. He explained I had carried a lot of hurt and anger from childhood, but he went into much more detail as to what's going on a grander level. And he would say, you don't have to dream, You can think of me, and I'm there.
So it really started, as you said, in this friend's house, and you began with a dream, and it was like you were dreaming, talking to God. So just explain what he looked like.
Oh, it was hilarious. I mean, he had this, well, depending on the subject, we talked about love and Valentine's Day. You know, he would be wearing a big pink t-shirt, a red heart, and a hat, or Boston, you know, he liked to have a hat. He looked like George Burns. And he had very, very haunting, mysterious blue eyes that were just, that's why I say, what is real, what is fantasy? I would get lost in those eyes. But he was hilarious. And such sense of humor. He informed me right away that he's an atheist. He doesn't believe in God. A dog is true to his nature. So he would be dressed very casually and drinking the coffee, and sometimes he would be percolating it and getting the, you know, he says he loves Kona. That's his favorite brand. So, you know, can you have Kona coffee in dream time? And then, but this comfort, the energy. He said there's so much more to dreams. You know, the old saying that life could be a type of dream. But he just, it was so, to get answers to questions that, you know, as a child I wanted to see his face, I wanted to understand and have some, and that was another talk that we had, and it was just, so I thought, I can't keep this inside. I mean, the lonely people, and I love the word we came up, he has a great sense of humor. He talked, we would create words like bargage for baggage and garbage, internal drama and whatever. And the main thing is, you know, the all one. It's alone, put the L there. You know, you really are not alone. I'm here for all of you, and you can find me in here and get answers and to your questions, and to connect with other beings also, because we're all a part of that family.
I think the beautiful thing about this book is that it's an illustration of how there's not a lot of difference between dream and realities, and how we create our own realities.
Yes.
And that's what he was trying to tell you, and so you could tell other people, like, you started with this dream-like sequence, but then you woke up, but then you were still talking to God.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets to where I don't know what is what, and it didn't matter at that point. I always tell people it's the proof's in the pudding. It should, the inspiration and the words and the message was. It changed my life, because I didn't really want to be here. I was so tired of, and I always felt, even as a child in church, I knew that God was more than, you know, this mean, vengeful Father. I always knew that we could. That's why I argued. With him, I would argue, I can't publish, people are going to think I'm crazy. And then he would remind me. He said, well, remember, you didn't ask me if you were going to college. You told me when you were 11 years old. And I thought, and he said, he even quoted the woman that took me to church when Geneva would come take you to church, because my parents would fight and drink. It was terrible. You would talk to me then, and I heard you.
So you've always had this beautiful ongoing conversation with God. He was just reminding you through this series of coffee mornings, or dreams of having coffee with God. And then, as you said, you woke up and you continued this beautiful conversation that you'd been having actually all your life with God.
Yes.
And then you started to write the next book, because the conversations continued not just with God, but with many other entities.
He opened the portal through the
Right.
dream time, and then the other angelic beings came through, again, beginning in a dream. After I would wake up, they would be there, and then in the middle of the day, I would have angels, ascended beings, come in the middle, just out of nowhere, and they always had just such loving energy, and they just teaching. Just, it was poetry. It was just like, again, you're not alone, and you know, you're connected to life on all worlds, dimensions. In my Father's house are many mansions. Is the theme. So here was a whole nother. Except this was a bunch of. I have a chapter called A Visit with Jesus the Christ, and I asked him how he did what he did, and he just, in my mind, he says, if you're willing to pay the great price. And we quoted that at the Ozark talk. I was like, wow, you can do everything I did if you're willing to pay the price. So it's like you can talk to Jesus, you can talk and connect and grow and be healed and pass it on, you know, share the love.
So I think what you're saying is we've all got the answers within us, and we can all talk to God or
Yes.
ourselves or our own souls at any time, can't we?
Yes, God is in here, and he's beyond. He said, call me the dog. He said, my true name is I am that I am. I'm beyond male or female. And he said one thing that really got me in the beginning, it makes me cry. He said, I come to you as a father figure because you didn't have it. Because I had some women who were against, why is all this patriarchal father stuff? And he said, you needed a father, so I was that for you. To someone else, I could be mother, I could be a butterfly. And I was in tears because, you know, this little boy is still inside of me, and he's still looking for a daddy. So I found my daddy, you know, God's my daddy. Go daddy.
But he is talking to you constantly, isn't he? And you've got this internal dialogue constantly, but we all can. And he comes to us in a way that we will always understand and connect with.
And it's so important for people to realize that it's all, you know, the kingdom of heaven is within. And it is nice to have connection with other people and guides and readings, but I always tell people that the true guru is you. And sometimes it takes a little difficult dark nights of the soul to open us up. Because my father was so cold and mean and abusive, I went inside. And I went to church and I found some solace. And I was like, there's got to be more. So that actually led to a breakthrough in consciousness, which opened it up. I did shut it off for a few years because life gets in the way, college and career. But we need that feeling. And it's just an instant, because since the God energy is beyond time and space, you know, I talk about my John revelations when I'm shaving, and I can ask a question, and such laughter. The humor is what got me.
Right.
You know, it's once he says, and we have a whole chapter about fantasy possesses elements of truth. He says, don't get caught up in the intellectual. Truth has the same two different sides of the same coin. He said, call me fact, call me fantasy, call me fiction. Just call me when you need help. And I was like, oh.
Beautiful messages. Thank you, Mike.